Once, when I was a few years younger than I am now, I was selling a lot of items my daughter brought home from college she no longer needed. One item was a microwave in great condition. I already had one, so decided to sell this one online. I've often used Craigslist without any problems, so of course, I'm not thinking of any dangers that could arise. Well, I soon put myself in a pretty dangerous position. A man, he sounded young, called inquiring about the microwave. I seriously wanted someone to pick it up, but he said he was taking care of his sick father and couldn't leave him, but really needed the microwave. He told me where he lived, which really wasn't very far from me. An apartment building in a side of town that was relatively safe, so I agreed to take it to him. Once I arrived to the building, he asked if I could bring it up. I said no, it was too heavy. He said he could not leave the apartment, I was going to have to bring it up. Well, at this point, I just wanted my money and to leave, so I agreed to that. There I went hauling it up a flight of stairs. Luckily, it wasn't one of the very large ones. But still, it was an inconvenience to me. Once I got to his apartment door, I saw him. A man in his mid to late 30s, standing there with shorts and a muscle shirt on. Behind him were lots of barbells and weights for bodybuilding. He was in magnificent shape with huge muscles. He said, "Oh, please set it down here," motioning to the kitchen counter. Okay, that required I enter the room, which immediately I felt uncomfortable. He then proceeded to inform me that actually he couldn't come for the microwave because he was on house arrest after serving 15 years in prison. I had parked beyond his permitted perimeters, and he couldn't make it out to my car. All I felt was every ounce of blood run out of my body at that moment or so. It seemed that way. He was alone. There was no one there he was caring for. He just lied to me about that to get me up here, and now I'm alone in an apartment with a felon right out of prison who could snap my neck like a twig if he should even think about it. I mumbled something like, "Okay, well, here you go, delivered." Slowly inching my way toward the door, he said, "Hold on." "Let me get your money," and went to the other room, just quick enough to retrieve the money. I almost ran out, but had a strange feeling that I shouldn't do that, just remain calm and act like all is okay and leave ASAP. He handed me the money, then started to chit-chat a bit. I listened for a sec and got to the door somehow. When I turned to leave, he quickly said, "Oh, it won't turn on. How do you work it? Can you show me?" So I had to turn around and go back in, terrified but trying not to look terrified. Somehow, I kept my cool and said, "Oh, you just press this and that," and to my great relief, it came on and he chuckled, saying he was not good with appliances. Okay, so he was being nice, but something just felt off. I made it back to the door and almost ran to the stairs, but forced myself to walk slow as not to alarm him. I felt like if I did, it would make him mad. I heard an uncomfortable laugh behind me. I didn't turn around to engage. I just kept walking down those stairs till I was at the bottom and could breathe again. I soon saw other people and felt better. What was I thinking? I couldn't believe I had placed myself in that position. Sure, he didn't do anything physical to me, but he did lie to get me there. What else was he capable of? When I think of all the possible scenarios that could have gone down had I not been cool-headed. I think he may have attacked me, and who would know? Not a soul. I hadn't told anyone from home where I was going. Yes, I'd be missed, and probably for days, maybe even months, before found, if ever. To this day, I still get this scared feeling in my gut just thinking about what could have happened to me if I had been taken by surprise while alone with this man. Never again. Never again. I had an entertainment center advertised, and a woman asked to come over to have a look at it. We set up a time, and when the time came, she didn't show up. I texted her, and a couple hours later, she replied and asked if it was too late to come by. It was 10 p.m., but I said okay. She said she would be there in 10 minutes, but wasn't there 20 minutes later, and I texted her again. 10 more minutes, she said, but she hadn't shown up by 11 p.m., so I texted again and said we would have to do it another day, and she replied that she was just pulling up. I go to my front door, and sure enough, she is pulling into the driveway, and there are about 4 or 5 other people in the car with her. They all get out and start walking towards the door, and I ask them what they are doing, and the woman says they all want to see the entertainment center. I tell her that only she can come in, and at that point, I wasn't sure I even wanted her to come in. She says she needs at least one other person's opinion. I say no. She gets indignant, and I ask her to leave. And she says that I am not being a very good Christian. I say I am fine with that, and went in my house and locked all the doors, peeking out the window. One of the dudes who was with her is pissing at the end of my driveway, but then they get in the car and drive away. The whole thing was super bizarre. Was moving out of an apt that had washer and dryer hookups into one that did not. So I sold my washer and dryer. Ended up having separate buyers. Guy who bought the dryer was great. He was getting it for his daughter who was going to college. I helped him load it up in his truck. He gave me the payment, and I never heard from him again. The guy who bought the washer was a different story. I got a text from him, asking if it was still available. We haggled the price, all normal stuff. We set a time, and I waited for him to get there. Now, I only had 1 week left in the apt, so I didn't care too much about random people coming to my home like I normally would. Pretty much all of my stuff was moved into my new place, but the internet wasn't turned on yet, so I was still just sleeping on an air mattress in the old one for the time being. He ended up being a few hours late and showed up in a truck that was used for transporting large glass panes, like this. He had like 5 people with him, all crammed onto the front bench seat of the truck. They loaded it onto the truck with it leaning at a 30-degree angle against the glass pane rack, or whatever you would call it. He tried to haggle it down to a lower price, but I didn't budge. He left, and I thought it was done. Later that night, I start getting texts from him about how it doesn't work and he wants his money back. I told him, as it was written in the post, that it was sold as is and was working. I assume he damaged it in the way he rigged it on his truck. Well, after a day, he starts calling me and cussing me out, texting death threats, and I have other random numbers calling me doing that same. 2 nights after I sold it, I wake up at 3 a.m. with people banging on my door yelling. Luckily, I lived on the 2nd floor with no easy access to the windows. I sat there for about 15 minutes while they continues to yell through the door. The next day, I moved the rest of my stuff into my new apt and never went back other than to turn the keys in. I still got calls, texts from him on random numbers for 2 months over a 150 washer. I don't sell stuff on Craigslist anymore. I got GTV for the Piece 3, But then got a PS4 about 2 weeks later, since I got surprised by an extra large paycheck and had money to blow. So I decided to sell my PS3 copy for $40. As soon as I put the listing up, I legit got a text not even 10 minutes later for a guy that wanted to meet in half an hour to pick it up. I wasn't busy, so I decided to do it. The guy was about 10 years older than me, incredibly skinny, to the point of ribs practically showing through his shirt, and had a tick. Make the transaction and think that's the end of it. No, on my drive home texted me, wanting me to come over to his place and play it with him. I politely decline. He then goes on to text me a novel about his life story and his time serving in Afghanistan and his PTSD and depression. I felt bad for him, but still didn't want to go hang out with a stranger I meet on Craigslist. He then starts asking me when I'd be free to hang out and tries to make plans. I explain politely that I'm not really looking to make friends through Craigslist or anything. He tries calling me. I turn off my phone and go to sleep. I turn it back on in the morning, and I've got 20-something missed calls and over 60 text messages from him, getting increasingly more angry, violent, and threatening as they went along. I installed an app to block his number, and that solved it. But for a good week or two, I was afraid of accidentally running into him again.